Hello and welcome to episode 238 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly Podcast of Many Topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and we are back for another episode all about Mother 3. We are excited to talk about it, but also maybe somewhat emotionally drained, because the end of Mother 3 is a ringer of tears and gasps and many other things. But to go through all of it, I'm joined by the same three panelists as the previous week, starting with Joe Padilla.
You reap what you sow.
And Alana Hagues.
Howdy.
And Zach Wilkerson.
I'm not ready. Hi.
I was being positive, and everybody else was like,
I was quoting from the game.
You were.
I was being positive, too, about the ending of this game. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this game. At the point where I was in the previous episode, I was early in Chapter 4. I don't think I'd even reached Club Titabu yet. But that's when Mother 3 becomes a more traditional RPG. You have more than one or two party members from Chapter 4 onward. And there is a little bit of, dungeon to the next dungeon kind of tasks, more so in Chapters 4 through 7 than in 1 through 3. But also, it goes stranger places and darker places, and it culminates in a Chapter 8 that is a hell of a finale that we could probably do an entire third episode just on the last 30 minutes of the game.
Easily.
But let's start it. Well, okay, put a pin in that, because Zach and I, you and I have discussed an idea that I think will factor into that a little bit. But
perhaps, yes.
but Zach, continuing with this thread, what are your overall feelings coming and impressions coming out of finishing Mother 3?
It's an all-timer. I mean, honestly, I have played this game up through Chapter 4, probably 3 times up until now. But Chapters 6, 7, and 8 are just, they're otherworldly. They Earthbound is a great game. This game is so much better than Earthbound, and I hope it gets localized at some point. It's incredible. It's difficult in the good way, in terms of the turn-based combat. They do some really fascinating things with the combat, but the story, the story is, it rocked my world.
All right, and Joe, same question. What are your feelings on this game now that you finished it recently?
Absolutely stunning. Pretty much everything in this game, on the level it's working, works for me. I love the art direction. I love the music. I think the story is fantastic. These characters are a delight. It really emotionally resonant with me. I think it is one of the best games I've ever played.
Okay, well,
agreed.
That's so far we're 2 out of 2 on this is one of the best games ever made.
It's phenomenal.
Alana, what are your feelings on this?
Well, I won't surprise you then, because I also agree with both of my other panelists. But I think there's 2 games in particular I always bring up that I've played on Retro Encounter. One is Xenogears, and the other is Suikoden 2, and Mother 3 is right up there with both of them, and both of those other games have, become top 10s, and this is also right up there. And I think, in a similar way to Joe, especially for somebody who plays mostly RPGs, I don't think I've found a game like it that speaks to me politically, emotionally, personally, as much as Mother 3 does. It was hard. The last sequence in particular was really, really difficult for me to sit through, because, everything that had been leading up to it, and I'm sure we'll go into it in great depth later on, it just hit me. Everything, it was the culmination of everything. Everything had been building up to something, and it was like a firework going off, and I thought, oh my god, it was so special. And yeah, Earthbound I adore and would probably also go in that top 10, but I feel like Mother 3 kind of surpasses it. They're pretty different, so it's in similar, different ways, but I don't know, Mother 3 just really clicked, and I was expecting it to be really good. I wasn't expecting me to come away from it oh my god, this is what I needed right now, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely.
Regarding my feelings, I've been part of the Retro Encounter podcast for right around 5 years, and I've been hosting and producing most of it for 3 years. And we've covered a lot of my favorite games of all time. We did episodes on Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG and Dragon Quest V. And it's always fun sort of celebrating games I already knew were this good. But then when something really exceeds expectations, like when I was pretty much blown away by playing Suikoden 2 for the first time a little less than 2 years ago. This is at that level. Like, I knew this game was good. I knew it went emotional places. I even knew who the identity of the Masked Man was basically the moment I saw him. But that doesn't make the
game makes that very obvious.
Yeah, but that doesn't make everything in Chapter 8 hit less hard, or everything that in I would say Chapter 5 and Chapter 7. Mother 3 goes incredible personal, emotional, political places, and to talk about that sort of first when you're reacting to Mother 3 is perfectly correct, but it's also just a rock-solid RPG mechanically that is creative and has a decent challenge balance. This is a crafted RPG that does amazing things with RPG storytelling. And I in the GBA episode a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that I thought the best or at least I alluded to the idea that the best GBA RPG to me is Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, for how it blends writing and game mechanics beautifully. Yeah. I think this might exceed it.
It blows it out of the water.
Mother 3 is maybe the best Game Boy Advance game, both because of how strong it is mechanically and visually, and the story is just a mind blow. And I think this is one of the all-time great RPGs of its era.
Yeah, like, when people come in with expectations, like, Mother 3 is heralded, isn't it? Like, oh my god, it's so good. And that kind of terrifies me about games sometimes. Like, you go into something like Final Fantasy VI, and you're like, oh my god, will it live up to everyone's expectations? And, like, the special thing is when something exceeds all of those really lofty expectations, you're like, no, I get it. Like, and this is another one of those moments, I think.
Yeah, when I go into something that has a lot of baggage or a lot of clout, I try to temper my expectations a little bit. But I mean, the classics are classics for a reason a lot of the time. And I mean, Mother 3 has such a crazy reputation, especially since it's been Japan only for these 15 years, or maybe a little less than 15 years. It almost had this. It has this feeling of being a secret classic that Nintendo doesn't want you to see or something, and that adds to its mystique a little bit. But I think it lived up to everything for me, which is insane. I mentioned the previous episode that I tried to play this in the late 2000s, and then my laptop died, and that was a true anecdote. I remembered the place where I had stopped when I got there. It was partway through Chapter 7, but I didn't remember all of the steps that this game was taking. When I replayed it, I noticed more things and thought more critically about some things that I think I appreciated it more now in 2020 than I did in, say, 2009 or whenever I played it. So, listeners, we've been gushing about this game for 8 minutes already. So please go in with that expectation. If you are maybe thinking we'll be trying to take down some of the ideas in this game or be extremely critical of it, sorry.
Who would? I mean, seriously. This game is amazing.
Yeah, so where do we begin? I guess Chapter 4. It's a little strange to me that a lot of this game centers around a club called Titty Boo that I wasn't sure if it's just a regular rock club or if it's deliberately selling sex a little bit.
What no idea.
Judging by the line that says that's advertising it, says a paradise of music and other stuff too, where it's like, what does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit like the In-N-Out Burger secret menu.
Are they selling sex at In-N-Out Burger?
No, but the animal burger isn't on the menu at the top, like above the cashier either. Yeah, I'm not sure if Club Titty Boo is supposed to be like a strip joint that has music or not, and I'm not sure like what Kumatora has been doing there for 3 years, especially since she rejects ideas of femininity often. Although like she is, at least in canon, attractive in the context of this game. So I didn't really know what to think about it, but rescuing Duster from some combination of AC/DC and Run DMC was an interesting choice.
Tondagosa!
Tondagosa. I don't know what that means, but I'm into it.
Oh, I love them. It's such a nice nod to the Runaway 5, isn't it?
They're different from the Runaway 5, but but very much in the spirit of it. And you had to play a rock, paper, scissors logic puzzle to recruit Lucky back onto your team.
I failed that at least twice.
I got it right the first time because I do enjoy that kind of puzzle, but I did have to talk to each player in the in that thing like 2 or 3 times each to make sure I wasn't going cross-eyed. But you have to recruit an amnesiac duster with logic and by crawling through the attic of a club where there's a very, very rude upright bass as the boss. That was a slightly challenging fight. I think I died the first time I tried it.
Yeah, I hit a real difficulty spike in the attic. I think it was the first time I had to actually slow down and level up a little bit. Like, Mother 3 is not generally very, very hard, but, like, there are certain jumps in the game.
Yes.
And here was one of them that I thought, oh my god. And yeah, I died. The base was the first boss I died on as well. Yeah.
I think this one took me 2 or 3 tries, but other than that, I think that was the only boss battle that I had to redo.
Really? Wow. I mean, I died at bosses a lot in this game, and like I played a lot of turn-based RPGs in my time, and like I usually don't struggle, but like this game, maybe it's because like I could not combo because I have zero rhythm in life. I struggled in this game, and I liked that.
I didn't understand the combo system at first, and I didn't get a combo probably above 5 until literally the last dungeon in the game, at which point I sort of figured out that I was supposed to be in time with parts of the beat and the back music and the heartbeat of the enemy and not some made-up rhythm that I thought I had to learn. So I did get a couple 16 hits in the tower at the last part of the game. And against one of the final bosses too. But like for most of the entire game up to the first half of Chapter 8, I did not figure out the rhythm stuff at all. Maybe that would have helped me.
I mean, like, I understood it. Even when, like, there were times when I could, like, get it for, like, 9, 10, 12, 14 combos. There were the times where I'd get nothing. The comboing system made a huge difference in the difficulty of this game.
Yeah, I think if you can get combos regularly, your regular attacks will do, I don't know, maybe 25% more damage, and that's a lot.
I mean, you're looking at double damage approximately if you get in like the probably 14 to 16 range, I think.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, it really starts to rack up because they're like some of the hits are maybe 4 damage, but some of them get like 25 or something. So, as you go further on, those beats are very crucial to a lot of it. And I think the only now that I'm thinking about it, there was another boss. It was the classical music ghost.
In Chapter 2, in the castle.
That one messed me up too. That one and the angry bass guitar or the left behind bass guitar.
I thought it's a double bass, not a bass guitar.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Double bass, yes.
But for me, jumping ahead a little bit, I thought the 2 bosses that I thought were the hardest in the game were basically back to back. You have New Facade in the volcano, and then the barrier trio in Tame Tame Island. Both of those took me, I think, more than one try. But for all of the bosses, that took me more than one try to do, which was a handful. I could mostly fix it by going back and like maybe gaining one more level so Kumatora would learn a new spell, or buy some extra healing items and give them to Boney or Duster, and just readjust my strategy a little bit. So I don't think it was ever unfair. Maybe the most unfair when the game was with the barrier trio changing their weaknesses based on text. That was a challenge to figure out. But this is like I mentioned this earlier. I think mechanically this RPG does a lot of smart things with its game design, and you can even game it a little bit. Like it'll tell you when a hit is enough to kill someone with the mortal blow text, but you still have time to save them if you can act quickly enough before their health scrolls down, and slow it down by having them defend, because when a character's defending, their health zooms down at around half the speed.
I didn't realize that until the very last fight of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, but if I ever
very important in that fight.
After I figured that out, and this happened a lot in Chapter 7 and 8, when someone took mortal damage, I would immediately have them guard and then have a different character heal them to try and interrupt the damage, and just tricks like that, and also the variety of spells. Like there's a lot of useful status and stat up, stat down skills in this game that let you manipulate those systems. it's just a lot of good RPG stuff and not just a cool story, which I
agree.
Which is something I wasn't necessarily expecting going in. So in chapter 4, it's mostly about finding Duster again and then finding the hummingbird egg that he hid in a valley region before he lost his memory, and that's really the first time you finally have a party of 4 in the entire game. And again, I mentioned this before, but I think that the main trio of Lucas, Kumatora, Duster, and then sort of Boney as I don't know, I think Boney's a bit less of a character than those 3, but still, it's just a really good main 4.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite RPG parties that I've had, along with maybe Mass Effect 2, Nier. It's a really great party.
Oh man, my favorite RPG parties. Like we're talking about the ones that I love so much. I think of them almost like my children that I just want to be that I just want to see successful and happy. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know, like Trials of Mana, Dragon Quest XI, Chrono Trigger. I don't know if it quite hits that elite tier for me, but this is a really good 4 main characters.
I'd have to sit down and do like my top 5 or something like that, but this would definitely be in it. I really love these characters. I love their designs. I think they're all extremely useful.
I don't know how popular or unpopular this is. I think the most likable and fun design of the whole group is definitely Kumatora. She is like everything from her colors to her hoodie to like how powerful she is to her personality. I always wanted Kumatora involved in stuff. She's fun to use and fun to see in action. She's a great main character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess they're just not a bunch of misfits necessarily, but they're a bunch of not maybe outcasts. I can't think of the right word for it, but like you've got Lucas, a 13-year-old or however old he is, who's lost his mom. His brother's gone missing. His dad is still grieving over the loss of his son and wife. And then you've got Kumatora, who is a girl who, like you said, pushes away femininity. She is very much boisterous, but she doesn't really have a family apart from the gypsies. And then you have Duster, who's a thief who has a clubbed foot and a dog. And it's like, it's 4 people who shouldn't come together, and they do come together, essentially. And I think that's what makes them so appealing, is that nothing big is made of them. They're not like deified or anything, and they're not perfect human beings or anything like that, but they're just likable. Like, I can't think of anything I dislike about any of them. They're all really good in battle. They've all got really good dialogue. They meld together really well. It's just nice. It's good.
Yeah. From the outside, they're sort of unspecial. Like it's even made clear that Kumatora is not a part of a royal line. The Magypsies just decided to make her the princess of Osohe Castle. Yeah. So they're in a way none of them are the chosen one. They have a certain level of ordinary to them, but just work really well as a team and are clearly like good people trying to do good. I never had a single doubt about any of their motivations in a way like I'm sure Duster's going to betray the party, or this is inconsistent with what they were before. I never had a feeling like that. Again, just really well balanced, well designed team, both from a personality and visual design and gameplay standpoint. Like even Boney, who by far has the least amount to do in the party, he doesn't have the skills or spells of the other 3. He has the uniqueness of being a loyal dog and has the highest speed in the party by far, so he's the best item user of the bunch. And you want to give him all your bombs and all of your best healing items as a result. So like all of them they fit very nicely into a 4-piece puzzle in terms of party design. Mm-hmm. And I can get weird about like theory crafting and party design and things like that. If you've heard me talk about Trials of Mana or Diablo 2, then you at least understand that a little bit. It's like, oh no, he's getting weird about which class to pick again. And like there's no level of customization of your party like in a lot of other RPGs in Mother 3, but it's 4 characters that fit very well together, and I think it's a really, really strong main team.
That is good.
But moving on from one of the greatest video game music bands of all time, and a club with some questionable business practices. In Chapter 5, you locate the egg in a forest, but realize that the robot, or I should say the golem that Duster hid it in, got picked up for trash removal. So there's an unusual sequence where you have to sort of travel through the highways and underground tunnels of the world of Mother 3 to locate the dump where it's going. Did any of you help the robot that was charging or help the mouse lady find her 7 children?
I started the mouse stuff, yeah, but I tried to do the robot as well, but I missed. I was 1 second off. I was 14 seconds.
I got 14 seconds twice and decided, well, screw this. I have to record a podcast in 6 days.
Yeah.
Knowing this game, I feel like it would only go up to 14 just for the sake of humor.
Yeah, probably.
Yes, that's very, very possible.
Yeah, and I only found a few of the mice along the way. But going through this, all the chimeras that they have, I mean, they're funny, but they're also very unsettling. These Frankenstein creations of just mashing 2 types of animals together.
Yeah, they really walk the line between amusing and terrifying, and almost all of them are communicated as being very strong and dangerous. That I think added to it a little bit. And like even from the very beginning, you have those what were the cow snake things called around the train station?
Oh, cattle snakes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. From the cattle snakes at the very beginning, the game is telling you these are weird but dangerous in a way that sort of I think hangs over you the whole game. It's like, oh no, chimeras are going to mess you up if you're not careful. And
right.
and I think it held to that promise.
Right, and before that you've only had like ordinary snakes or bats or yams, so it's like it's a hell of a difference. They're pretty awful. I mean, I laughed at, I think it was like a kangaroo shark or something. I found that very amusing, but just on my own kind of. But yeah, like it's horrifying. And I think after seeing the Drago at the beginning of the game, which has been half roboticized, like you think that's what could happen to every single animal and what is happening to every single animal by the pig army. It's awful.
The one that still haunts my nightmares is the ostrich elephant, where the body of the ostrich,
yeah.
the body of the ostrich is the elephant head and the elephant's trunk is the neck of an ostrich.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if there are 1, 2, or 0 brains in that thing. Don't think about it too hard. But when you eventually go to the Chimera lab in Chapter 7, you meet Dr. Andonuts there, and it appears to be maybe even the same Dr. Andonuts from Earthbound, and we can talk about how that's possible a little bit later. But I mean, that whole laboratory segment, there aren't a lot of random battles in it. I don't think there are any, because you're disguised as a member of the Pigmask army. So it's kind of a cool sort of like, facility style dungeon, or maybe you could even call it a mission. But there's a chimera in it so powerful that you get an instant game over if it even tags you. So
yeah, so funny story. Lucas decided to learn a PSI spell right in front of it, and I died.
Oh, so you
can die at that point in the game? I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
But if you get a fever from learning a PSI spell, then you can't dash. And
it saw me. Yeah. The minute I came in, it was like, Lucas is having a fever. I was like, not now, please. And the chimera just went up to me. I was like, okay, fine. They're in Smash Bros. They look really cute in Smash Bros. They do not look cute on a GBA screen.
No. This is like that is maybe the second scariest scene in a GBA game, other than everything that the SRX does in Metroid Fusion.
Oh God, yeah, a nightmare.
Oh, I'm sorry, SAX, I think, right?
Yeah, SAX and Nightmare.
Yes,
it's pretty awful.
Is the Samus Aran X, whatever. Like being able to communicate dread in this way from a weird purple behemoth with a bird sitting on top is pretty remarkable of them.
I really want like a plush of that, though. I really do.
In a really morbid way.
Yeah.
Yes, it's in this game. It's like, ugh, this is pretty horrifying. But yeah, in Smash Bros. It's so cute. I really would love a plush of that. The chimeras are, it's just kind of falling in line with all this about how kind of the Pigmasks and Facade are kind of corrupting the nature around them. Starting with roboticizing the Drago, and then it's a few years later, and you see all the nature around you, and it's no longer normal enemies. It's all these just awful creations that have very punny names, but are no less horrifying.
Yeah, because like you've already seen like the commodification and the the capitalist evolution of Tazmily and how it's turned into suburbia. And then you go in chapter 4, I think you run across a train track, don't you? And then in chapter 5, you're on a motorway highway to some extremely high-tech building. Like, you've gone from really cute little town to extremely huge buildings, lots of electricity, and horrendous, hideous monsters in the space of about 2 or 3 hours. And it's a big shock, I think, even if it is gradual.
And where we left off, when you finally locate the dump where the egg is located, you fight like the saddest golem in the world, who's like struggling just to be alive and made of junk. But after you take that out, you the next part of the game is going through Thunder Tower, and this is probably the earliest part of the game where it's very blatantly obvious that Lucas and that, well, I should say that Klaus is still alive, because Lucas is mistaken for their commander. Their commander is this masked man who, like, I don't know how oblivious you are to not realize that the masked man is Klaus from the moment you see him. But in that dungeon in Thunder Tower, which I think is connected to one of the factory areas, it's made very clear that Facade and the Pigmask army are basically using a lightning machine to blast anyone who doesn't own a happy box with lightning, which puts the stuff with Alec and Reggie and Flint's homes into just a slightly ruder context. But that's a pretty long dungeon, and at the very top you fight a security system, and then Facade takes a giant dive off of the Thunder Tower due to slipping on a banana peel, and that factors into the game later.
You also get the insight into who the leader of the Pigmask army is, because you find the king's bedroom, don't you?
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the hot spring and the maid, and you get all of these little Earthbound references, and this is where things start to fall into place a little bit, I think. Like, that bedroom is pretty creepy, but it obviously evokes everything that's kind of uncomfortable and disgusting about the horrible kid from Earthbound, who makes an appearance again later.
And I think the lightning is super interesting in the way of, like, I don't think anyone in Tazmily knows that this lightning is being programmed. It's like they kind of see it as some sort of divine intervention in a way,
either something divine or a natural phenomenon, which it's neither.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that, I mean, I took it very similarly to the all good things, all bad things come from God sort of view that some people would have.
I think Karl Marx would have some things to say about that. Yes,
I would know nothing about that. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting note to have, and when it's particularly affecting seniors in the community, and then it affects Reggie. I think it's very scary and very dark.
Targeting the oldest and the most peaceful members of the community is a bit of a dark choice there, and also I think it's a reference to something that happens early in Earthbound. Pokey becomes a disciple of the Blue Cult,
right?
And the leader of that cult, Mr. Carpainter, uses lightning powers to keep people in line. So I thought, and I think that maybe that is an idea that Pokey/Porky carried to a much more extreme version in Mother 3.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Immediately after Thunder Tower, the rope snake heroically tries to keep you airborne, attached to one of the UFOs of the Pigmask army for a while, but you end up dropping to the ground, and Lucas lands in the sunflower fields in the shortest chapter in the game.
Powerful chapter too.
Yeah, it's Lucas and I guess also Boney. Like thinking of Lucas's departed mother, Hinoa, like having her sort of direct him to the edge of this beautiful sunflower field, but then falling off of a cliff and landing in a bale of hay. The whole thing takes maybe 3 minutes, but it is so beautiful and powerful, and is a reminder of the tragic passing of Hinoa in Chapter 1 that hangs over the whole game.
It pervades a lot following it, doesn't it? Because you go and talk to a lot of characters afterwards and they say, oh, a woman came along and told me to do this, or, oh, the ghost of your mother came along to put this here. And it's like, the Mother series isn't necessarily... It doesn't really push, like, motherhood or, like, the mother role that much. Because, you know, in Earthbound, your mother's at home. And Mother 1 is better at it because, obviously, your grandmother is the one who raised Gygus or Geeg or whatever. But here, like, your mother is almost the driving force of everything, even though she's absent. Like, she's the one who saves you. She's the reason that Klaus wants to get stronger. And, you know, as a result of everything, like, this whole thing started off by the death of the mother kind of thing. It's pretty horrible.
My interpretation of the name of the series was always about like we are all part of one Mother Earth, but also your mother will always be there for you. Like are the sort of two ideas. And in Mother 3, those themes hit so hard because of Hinawa's just unbelievable empathy and kindness hanging over everything that Lucas and Klaus do. And also, I mean, talking about like saving the Earth and destroying the Earth and sort of what happens to Mother Earth in the context of Chapter 8. But after the Sunflower Fields, the game gets really RPG as hell because you are given 7 goals and need to go to each one of them in sequence.
You don't. You can do them in any order, apart from the last needle.
No.
You can, yeah. I did them in the order the game recommends, but you can, in fact, get Duster first. I was reading... You can do them... Yeah, so it's like the original Mother. You can do the needles in any order, apart from, obviously, the first and the last one, which is Chapter 8, obviously. So I did not know that until I looked it up.
I had no idea. Is there a way that I could have made New Facade easier by doing it later? Maybe?
Well, I mean... It's not going to make a difference, really. I think everything scales with you at that point. I don't know. I mean, I did it in the recommended order and had as much trouble as you both did. So,
because also the fighting the masked man at the 6th needle, the one that's near Alex's house, is also a bit of a challenging fight. I don't know if I could have done that at a lower level.
Yeah, no, no. I think it's the 6th, the 7th, and the 1st you have to do, but the other ones you can do in any other order. So you can get Duster back first.
I mean, that's like very out of the way from where they direct you.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you get like Duster really early and then do like the 3rd, 4th, 5th needles? Because the stuff in Saturn Valley, skipping ahead a little bit, in Chapter 7, everyone is separated because of dropping out of the sky, and Duster lands in Saturn Valley, which has been taken over by the Pigmask army. And liberating Saturn Valley is not the biggest challenge. But the dungeon after it, the volcano with New Facade at the end, I think is one of the harder parts of the game. So like, could you have rescued Duster like very early, and then gone and done needles 2, 3, and 4? So you have a full party of 4 for those needles, and then maybe go to do the 4th needle, which is the one in the volcano near Duster, like after you've leveled up a little more, maybe?
I'd have to try that, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I would have done that, because I was slightly annoyed I had to do 1.5 dungeons with only a party of 3. Because it's, again, I like these 4 a lot. I want them to stick together.
But also, you mentioned Saturn Valley, because this Mr. Saturns are in this game.
Which is so delightful. It was a delightful surprise.
Yes. KO. But it's also really strange. Why is there a Saturn Valley here too when we haven't seen other places from Earthbound, but this is still here, and it still has some of the similar layout that it had in Earthbound.
Yeah, we can talk about that, why that's maybe true when we get into Chapter 8 stuff, but that was a little bit of a surprise. But I'm glad to see that the Mr. Saturns are just as delightful and positive as they were in Earthbound.
I really like the one stuck in the bin.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're all so good. And then the when they ask you to gather the birds, but it ends up being a flying cage of birds rather than an assortment of birds that carries you. Like, they're still in the cage.
And around that point in the game is where you realize that Rope Snake believes he is just as important to your party, if not more so than, say, Duster and Boney.
Yeah, and he really goes for it. He really tries to redeem himself. I put in my notes Rope Snake redemption, and then right immediately after saying never mind.
Oh, he's trying his best.
He is trying.
His jaw just hurts, all right?
Yeah.
My jaw would hurt too if I was attaching myself to multiple aircraft and trying to support the weight of 3 humans and a dog.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, you think it's cute to play tug of war with a dog by like putting the rope in your mouth too. Don't do that. Dog jaws are stronger than human jaws. They will rip your teeth straight out. So like that lesson that I learned as a small child, which I didn't get my teeth ripped out. I was just informed of that. Is what came to mind when I saw the rope snakes struggling to support those 4 people. But we mentioned the different pins. The 7 Magypsies are, each of them is guarding a pin which pins a dark dragon in place. There's a dragon that is underneath the Nowhere Islands who has power to shape or destroy the world, and the dragon will become free if all 7 pins are pulled, and if a person with a pure heart or a good heart pulls the last pin, then the dragon's power can be used for good. If someone with an evil heart does it, then the dragon's power can be used for evil. That's the basics of it, although it's a little bit more complicated than that. And when the very first one you see being pulled by the masked man, and then numbers 2 through 6 are basically alternately drawn by Lucas and the Masked Man. It's clear that the Pigmask army is trying to get the dragon's power for themselves, so they're seeking out each of them. But the Magypsies that guard them, it was a feeling, or at least a tone that each of them conveyed that I was a little surprised by. Like, each of them are equally good, but also kind of flippant. But they welcome you coming to pull their needle, and like almost appreciate you for doing so, and welcome death or the end of their existence with open arms. Because every time a Magypsy's needle is pulled, they fade away and disappear. That was, I wasn't expecting that. In a GBA game, someone resembling a drag queen just welcoming death was not something I totally expected.
Okay, it's complicated.
It is strange. And my favorite one was the one that was asleep all the time.
Yeah.
And
I left a note for you.
And
they're there, yeah.
Yeah, she just leaves a note there for you. I think it's the one outside of the volcano. And when you fight New Facade, who again fell off the Thunder Tower in Chapter 5, but is coming back with parts of their face covered in like saxophone horns. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the more challenging boss fights in the game. I had to go back and level up and fight it. That was the only part of the game where I did some legit grinding. I died once and said, okay, I'm going to stock up on healing items and not come back until everyone is 1 level higher. That's the only time in the game I really had to do that, and won the second time. But after you defeat New Facade, the Magypsy that's there wakes up, comes back, says, "Oh, I've left some detailed notes. Here are where the next 2 are. I don't know where the 7th one is here too. Good luck. I'll put them on your map." And it's like, you're the most useful NPC in this whole game. You're great.
Well, they also like drop you off like literally in front of the next dungeon too after you're done with that one.
Yeah, after you you have to navigate your way through the volcano again to get out of there, which is not a blast.
No. It's not fun to even get your way in there. That's why it's the hardest boss in the game.
And
there's no save point.
There's no save frog or hot spring in front of New Facade, and it's a boss that does a lot of damage.
Right. I wiped the New Facade, or the Facade in general, like 4 times in this particular fight. And it was just because, partially, like, there was no way I could avoid all the fights leading up to it. And, like, I was always just a little bit short on, like, PSI points. Like, I just didn't have... Like, I wasn't ready for it because I couldn't avoid the fights. And then, like...
You gotta cast life up and freeze a couple times.
Exactly, yeah. I just ran out of stuff. And I didn't have, and it turns out in Mr. Saturn Valley, there's a place that you can go buy gear that will help protect you from fire attacks, which I didn't know until afterwards. That would have been very helpful while I was walking there. But yeah, I mean, like, this game, it has some NES qualities to it. Like, it requires you to really think and explore a little bit, even in its very, like, sort of like train track version of a difficult turn-based RPG. And I didn't check, so that was my bad.
They give you the tools to help the more challenging parts of this game, but sometimes you have to dig a little bit deep for them. The dungeon after this, in the traditional or recommended order, is going through the ocean to the Tame Islands.
Oh boy!
I did not enjoy this dungeon at all.
No.
Yeah, going from oxygen point to oxygen point is one small challenge. And then the boss fight at the end isn't that bad. You have to fight some kind of current monster, like ocean current monster. And then you have to navigate the island area, which is medium difficult, but without any items, and also while hallucinating on mushrooms.
It's like my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, and then there's there's a fake hot spring that ends up being a pile of sludge, and it's like, oh, that's why Boney refused to go into this hot spring. It wasn't a hot spring at all. This is gross.
Right.
And I'm glossing over the most important part of this all. The oxygen tanks are mermen with enormous kissy lips.
Right.
Yes.
And they
take a long time to get through, like when they're giving you oxygen.
It's very pink.
Yeah, with each oxygen point, it like you basically have to French kiss this a merman one by one, a robot merman, I guess, and the screen fades to pink. It's a moment, and it takes like 7 seconds each time, and you have to do it conservatively at least 10 times more if you want to get the treasure in that area.
Right, and most of the time you'll only get to them when you've got a tiny bit left. It's really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind it so much just because like it was a bit of variety to the gameplay, but it's also not great. And if I wasn't able to speed it up a bit on my completely legal Game Boy Advance copy of this, then it would have been more annoying than it was.
The sequence leading up to going underwater, or after going underwater, yeah.
The multiple flints that most messed up part.
Flints and Klaus's, and I think a couple Wes's in there also.
It's the first time we've seen Klaus in chapters.
Yeah, it is.
And there's one of the Flints, if you talk to him, he says, "I'm gonna beat you, boy." And it's like, oh, God.
Yeah, and that cowboy howl becomes real. Yeah.
And then you think back to to him taking like the 2x4 essentially and hitting people with it, and you're like, oh, that's not a joke. Like it felt very real in that moment of like, yeah, perhaps Flint is a pretty violent father. Because you imagine this is possibly Lucas's subconscious kind of coming out through these mushrooms or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's said many times that Flint is reliable and kind. I don't think that necessarily hints that he beat Lucas as a child, although it may mean that. And I just thought that it was basically just getting to the people who were sort of within the hearts of these four characters, and that's why everyone they were thinking about Flint and Klaus and Wes, and that's why the chimeras were hallucinated as those things. And it's also some of them are kind of hard, like those walrus orangutans and the praying mantis.
Yeah, scorpion looking things.
Yeah,
mantis.
I thought they were mantis scorpions.
Down on them every time. Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't an easy sequence, but then at the end you do finally get to meet another Magypsy and then fight another one of the more challenging bosses in the game. The barrier trio, these 3 golems whose weakness changes often, and at the end they can cast Starstorm on you, which is no joke at all.
Yeah, no, that boss wiped me a bunch of times too, and the only reason I was even able to handle them is because I looked up who called out what, and that meant they were vulnerable to this weakness. I'm like, it's not an easy fight.
Yeah, I died once, then looked up a strategy, saw the weakness thing, and then won the second time. But
that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, but it's not an easy boss fight at all.
No, it's annoying. You can just use Boney's sniff though, and he'll tell you what the weakness is. That's what sniff does. It tells you what each. So every time it does that transformation, you can do a sniff. I know that means you'll waste a turn.
I should have thought of that.
Oh no, but like if you use that before they transform, which is what I did the first time, like it doesn't tell you anything, which is what my problem was. I was like, I did it once, and it happens a lot later in the game. Like if you use sniff, it's just like he smelled nothing, or it smelled weird. And that was where I used that, and I was like, oh, okay, I can't get any info from this boss. And then when they switched forms, I was like, oh, I didn't understand what it meant. So yeah, I mean, I just didn't get.
Oh, that makes sense. I should have thought of sniffing. Well, I did get beyond it. The last needle is over near where Alex's cabin was, and it's Ionia, the Magypsy that sort of supported you the most in the game, and gave I think both Lucas and Kumatora psi powers. The boss fight there is the Masked Man, but just before that boss fight, the badge that Flint gives you early in the game and you gave to Mr. Saturn to polish around the volcano area becomes the Franklin badge, a classic item returning from Earthbound, and basically makes makes Lucas immune to lightning for the rest of the game, which is helpful because the masked man uses lightning attacks both in an out of battle context and in battles often. And is sort of the crux to being able to defeat him there, because that masked man fight is not an easy one. I think I did win the first time, but you had to eat a lot of well done chickens and and dumplings and whatever I bought from the mole crickets. And oh my god, we forgot the mole crickets.
Right? Yeah.
The successful business mole crickets.
And they give you the most useless dungeon map in history.
Right.
Oh my god, yeah.
Just turn every time you get to a corner. That's all I do.
They give you that advice, which is helpful for navigating it, but the map that they give you is just a complete mess of cyan and purple that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, but not as bad as the map the Mr. Saturn community gives you, where it's just like it's nothing. It's just a few scribbles on a page, and it's like there's no distinguishing features. There's no sort of path. It just looks like you're walking up like upside down lightning, essentially.
Yeah, I think we need some mother version of the Rosetta Stone to translate like Mr. Saturn logic sometimes. But after you pull the sixth needle, shockingly, the main villain of this game, Porky, literally calls a space limousine to take you to the final area, which, again, unusual choice, but at least you get there without much of a fuss. New Pork City is big and flashy, and I think the first point, like every new thing in New Pork City makes it more clear as to who Porky is and what his character is. Because if it was only hinted before at the Thunder Tower, the way that Porky is being worshipped, that he has a statue in the town, he's recreated parts of Winnette, like a restaurant where everyone in the wait staff is a robot that looks like Porky's mother, and they recreate the game arcade from Winnette where you meet Frankie in Earthbound. It even has the same background noise and from the game from 15 years earlier than this one. It's I don't want to get too deep into the inner workings of Porky's mind, because that's a topic that might be its own podcast. But I think that there's a desire to be cooler than Ness, and a desire to recreate parts of his childhood that manifests in just ultra extravagant and twisted ways that you see all over New Pork City. And it gets even weirder in the final dungeon of the game. I guess they call it like the Empire Pork Tower, or whatever the name of the giant tower is. But in New Pork City, the first thing you do is follow some stink bugs through the sewers, and you meet the extremely tall man from Tazmily Village, who's now holed up inside an apartment. And he basically
that moment.
He tells you the entire backstory of the Mother 3 world of the Nowhere Islands, where basically everyone in Tazmily managed to escape the world in an arc after the world destroyed itself in what sounds like a world war or a nuclear conflict, but without being too specific about it. And then upon returning to the ruined world or the empty world, they voluntarily induced amnesia in themselves so they could lead peaceful, quiet lives that would never result in global conflict or nuclear war again. Which is why everyone in Tazmily in Chapter 1 feels like somewhat naive, like they had never experienced lightning or forest fires before, and are so susceptible to all of the mess that the Pigmask Army and Facade brings to them. It's because they had voluntarily wiped their own memories, and they were refugees of a previously destroyed world. Did I miss any details?
No, I was going to say, I think that the thing that I found surprising about it was, how recent it was. The idea that happened wouldn't have surprised me, but, it was clear that, it was, the humans who lived there at that moment. How far before we start in this game is that true? I don't know.
I don't know either, but my guess is less than 20 years, because there are children being born in Tazmily Village, not just Lucas and Klaus, and maybe even if Flint and Hinawa were children when the arc happened, because Hinawa is an adult woman who has a parent in Tazmily. Again, definitely less than 30 years. My guess is probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20. It hadn't been that long. But the Mad Gypsies had been there for thousands of years and guarded the secret of the Dark Dragon and the Needles. So my guess was maybe they left in their spaceship or their ark, they call it a white ship, and maybe they're in space in suspended animation or something for thousands of years. And when they finally return, the world is empty and governed by the Mad Gypsies. So
maybe.
So I think that maybe they were gone for a long, long time, but Tasmally itself had only existed for less than 20 years. But this is speculation. The idea that Tasmally was intended to be a pure, uncorrupted village only for Porky and the Pigmasks to deliberately, and Facade to deliberately corrupt it. I don't know, puts a dark turn on everything. And again, it boils down to Porky is just a spoiled brat of a kid who is ordering scientists to create these chimeras like Sid in the first Toy Story movie, and doing these things and being worshipped as a god, like making a clear through line to unchecked capitalism leads to unchecked power for the people at the top, leads to fascism, which I don't think it's a controversy for me to make that connection in the context of this game. I don't know, when I think, especially if you've played Earthbound, the realization that everything that's bad that's happened in Mother 3 is part of the twisted dream of that horrible bratty kid from Earthbound, just, I don't know, makes me want to take down Porky all the more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a particular line, I can't remember if Lita says it or if somebody else says it, but they say the reason that people left is because of the way that they live. So it makes you think, oh, did they develop society so much that they ended up in a similar position to New Pork City? Like, did capitalism kill their last world? And then you're looking at Mother 3 and you're seeing like where it is now with New Pork City, all really well developed and extremely extravagant, and hot dogs cost $200 or however much they cost, and it's like they're about to do it again, all over again. Capitalism is about to eat the world again. That's how I took it, essentially.
That's about right.
I think let's say years or even generations after the events of Earthbound, something in Foreside takes hold, and capitalism leads to global conflict, which destroys the whole world, which led to these people leaving in the Ark. I'm not going to blame Ness for everything that happened here. And Porky uses some space technology from Hagues to escape this and become a time traveler for an indeterminate amount of time. When you meet Porky in person, he's an ancient man and said that he's probably been doing this for 10,000 years. And Porky tries to, again, like half recreate and half remake the world with him as a central like deity figure, which again is just history repeating itself, despite the refugees of Tasmally deliberately trying to avoid that. And maybe it's all because the extremely tall man letter never said anything.
It's amazing to me that, and we'll get more into this. We get more into the ending of it, but I think it's going to become clear that this game is kind of as far as I've seen, the most salient critique of capitalism and consumerism that I've seen in a video game. Just in how in its totality, it's not just a joke about capitalism sucks, and here or there. It's this all-consuming, immature force that just wants to exist forever and wants to consume and wants to that has kind of a deeply nihilistic streak about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's exactly how I felt coming out of Mother 3.
Ignoring capitalism and going straight on to fascism, Porky is the target here. The reason he invited Lucas and his crew over is so that the Masked Man can pull the final needle with Lucas watching, so that the nuisances that, or at least to Porky, the nuisances that have been interfering with his plans can sort of just see his plans come to fruition. Is, I don't know, an extreme amount of hubris, but it leads the team into going through Porky's tower. He keeps inviting them to go to the 100th floor, but every new elevator takes you to a different floor, and Porky acts like it's your fault that you can't find it. Whatever, that jerk. You meet DCMC again, but they're, instead of playing a rock version of the Pigmask army, they're playing a rock version of like the Lucas and Klaus lullaby. there's a triumphant reunion between Duster/Lucky and DCMC, of course. Then you go through an area that's a reserve for tank hippopotamus chimeras. Then an area that's under construction. Then a weird. I mean, I'm going slightly out of order, probably. Then another throne room for Porky, where he has like a harem of women that are fanning him with palm leaves, and then a Magypsy home that makes it pretty clear that the final missing Magypsy is Facade all along. Locria and Facade are the same person. It's one of those Magypsy shell homes, but there's bananas left everywhere, and a discarded razor and lipstick.
Right.
And Facade's clothes as well.
Oh yes. So I have a couple theories about this. We know at some point that Facade collaborated with the Pigmask army to corrupt Tazmily, and Facade abandoned their duties as a Magypsy, as the former Locria, to help with the corruption of the community. But exactly how did this happen? Like why did Facade go to the dark side, or Locria go to the far to the dark side? I have 3 theories about this. One, Locria got extremely fed up and maybe even bored by being an inactive, near immortal being and just wanted change. Or bananas are some kind of evil poison to Magypsies, and too many bananas turned Locria evil. Possibly Porky even... Possibly Porky gave them bananas. Or the last one, this is the one I believe in the most, Magypsies stop, lose their innocence and purity if their beard grows too large. And Locria neglected to shave for some amount of time, and then grew a beard and became the evil Facade.
So you're saying that because Facade has a bigger beard, that's why he dies in the sewers? Because we're assuming that...
Yeah.
We're making the assumption, because obviously, we've already said the Magypsies die when their needle's pulled. Facade probably dies before their needle's pulled. Why? Like, that's never...
Yeah, the translator seems to indicate that Facade is gone at that point, which is why when I went up to that house, I was like, how is Facade a Magypsy? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, Facade was remade by scientists twice. First in a new Facade with their nose becoming saxophones, and then Miracle Facade, who you fight in the sewer, who has like 8 saxophones there.
But why? And if they're a Magypsy, why would they even need that?
Maybe they aren't a Magypsy anymore. Like it's the Nier Automata thing. If you replace all of your parts with your human parts with robot parts, are you a human anymore?
That's interesting. Yeah.
But the the immortality of Facade as a Magypsy or as a non-Magypsy, like, aside a little bit, the thing that really should have clued me in earlier is that from when they're new Facade and their nose is mostly saxophones, they play a slower off-key version of the Magypsy saxophone music in all of their speech.
I didn't even notice that.
That's when I twigged.
Yeah, and that's a really cool note. But exactly like how Locria became Facade, or what their total motivation was, is a little unclear. And again, that goes to my theories about razors and bananas, which I'm not sold, but I kind of like both of those, especially the razor theory.
I haven't heard a better theory, so you could do worse.
I'm pretty sold on the banana theory because I'm allergic to bananas, and my heart is full of joy and gold and butterflies. So I'd say your second theory is spot on.
I enjoy bananas, but I don't eat them nearly at the volume that Facade does. So
you'd be evil if you did.
But also, yeah, I don't know. I think the ones I like in order are Beard 1, Bananas 2, Ennui, or Corruption from Porky 3.
Yeah.
I like the first one.
Anyway, continuing up the tower, you finally meet Porky, but first you have to go through a series of games or tasks that resemble parlor games or children's games, but you have to let Porky win or robot
barely win.
Barely, yeah. Why?
You have to make it a game.
Because in the race, I won by hair, and it was still by too much.
No, you got to keep it close, because if you clearly throw the game, then he'll get mad at you for throwing the game. But if you lose by only a little bit, he won't be mad that he lost, and won't be mad that you threw it because it was kept close. It totally makes sense to me, but also just communicates even further that Porky is a spoiled brat of a kid that is just unlikable.
He's just a petulant little shit, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is.
Oh, yeah.
You know that from minute 5 of Earthbound with that obnoxious knock on the front door.
He reminds me of an orange leader I know. I don't care. Keep it in. I don't care.
It's pretty much like the ending scene of The Incredibles where Dash is running in that race and they're like you can't win too much. Like you have to make it close.
Yeah, go for second. Keep it close.
There's kind of two ways that I'm looking at it, and one is like the funny, like, oh, it's like The Incredibles, but it also reminds me of, on a darker note, how in the kind of capitalist system, the oppressed, they're like kind of tasked with, you have to succeed and you have to do great things and such, but it's only up to a certain level. Like you can do great things, but if you succeed too much, then you're going to get a slap on the wrist, or many times worse. Now you're being too good for yourself. You're doing too much. You're making the dominant class feel bad or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I saw that, I was like, yep. I definitely remember playing playing video games with kids, and they wouldn't want me to win by too much, or else they'd start crying. And these were like the rich kids, houses that was at or something.
That's
true.
Basically, playing with an awful child and like sort of managing the selfish wants of socioeconomic class conflict. Basically, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Similar idea, yes. A level of childishness and inability to accept defeat. Yeah, I mean, like I've babysat children and beat them at Smash Melee like 50 times in a row, and I wouldn't stop. I don't care. So I understand Porky a little bit.
I remember I was playing.
If there's one thing to take from this podcast, it's that Zach Wilkerson will kick your kid's ass in Smash Bros. Seriously.
That's the true story.
You got to be careful though. Like I remember I was introducing video games to the one of my younger cousins. Probably not something his parents would have wanted. And now he's taller than me, which is not acceptable at all. He's probably about 20 now. But I was playing, I think it was Soul Calibur 2 or Soul Calibur 3 with him. And for a while, first I just beat his ass to establish dominance. Then I let him win a little bit and was giving him tips like, oh, you should guard this high and this low.
Your mistake was letting him win.
No. I let him win a couple times. Then I taught him a couple things like the basics of guarding and combos. And then he won a couple times in a row. And then he started to, because he was a smart kid, like actually get good at the game. And it came to a point where he was winning, but I wasn't letting him win. So I made a mistake. It's like, okay, I need to switch to Mitsurugi and actually play seriously now. Like letting Porky win, but only by a little bit. There was a kernel of real world playing with children to that I remembered. Although my young cousin is definitely a better kid than Pokey ever was. Definitely.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's hard to be that bad.
Continuing on, the final confrontation with Porky. He's probably tens of thousands of years old. He's in a console that kind of looks like the weird spider robot he was in Earthbound. But before you meet him, you go through this like gondola ride that has a bunch of items and scenes from Earthbound depicted. And there's also scenes from Earthbound depicted in the movie theater in New Pork City. That goes back to the idea that made me think Porky just secretly wants to be cooler than Ness and is mad as hell that Ness was the hero of that story. Well, and Porky doesn't have any heroic qualities. I mean, he's a toady and a bully and a coward and all these awful things, but secretly he wants to be the cool hero and was just so mad that Ness was the cool hero. And that was a thought that occurred to me when you go through the gondola sequence.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm an idiot and enjoy rubbing out the pencil eraser.
Yeah.
Oh, it was delightful.
Doing that. It's so good.
And you see the Winnet City bus and the Runaway 5 bus.
Yeah.
All this Earthbound, paraphernalia and such, it seems like it's kind of reverent in a way. It's like I'm angry that I wanted to be you in this game. I wanted to be the hero in some way, in the way that I thought was correct and no one else did. And yeah, this is probably getting a bit too much into psychoanalyzing Porky / Pokey, but that's kind of how I took it, is like a little bit of Delita and a little bit of the Joker, though y'all might not agree quite with the former.
I would say a little bit of the Joker and a lot of every obnoxious kid you knew growing up.
As a person who interacts with teenagers a lot, and I love most of my students, or all of my students really, but it's true.
Just got to put that in there in case they ever come across this.
It's true. Yeah, I hope they do. But there are definitely teenagers who like that form of dominance. Not that I don't think that Porky thinks that he's doing the right thing, but like his right thing is like, I dominate, I have fun, really. Like, I'm cool. Like, ultimately, his end game is to like be the cool kid, because he wants to be Lucas's friend too, really. Whereas
I think he wanted to invite Lucas to his house, and then Lucas tell Porky that Porky's cool.
Yeah, we'll get back to this at another time. I will prove that there's a strain between Delita and Porky. Okay. You'll see where.
Hard disagree, but eventually Porky, you have to fight a bunch of Porky robots, which I made the mistake of casting like Love Omega and Starstorm on them, which we reflected right back. That was a rude awakening. And after defeating several of them, DCMC saves you just like the Runaway 5 saved you in Earthbound, and defeats the remaining ones. And eventually Porky takes you down a super fast elevator drop to the underground beneath the tower, where the location of the final needle is, and you fight Porky. It's a normal boss fight. I didn't even think it was that challenging.
It was easier than a lot of the ones in Chapter 7 post. Yeah,
in Chapter 7 and 8. But and after you defeat him, Porky puts himself inside a super safe sphere or something, which is basically imprisoning himself in a place where he's immune to harm, but also can't ever leave, which is a bit of a dark yet appropriate ending. Like he's a prison of his own mind and paranoia at the end, which I think is an appropriately dark and unpleasant ending for him. But then the real final conflict happens, where Lucas faces off against his brother, the Masked Man, with Flint nearby onlooking, and basically Klaus uses lightning to sort of fry your whole party, but the Franklin badge given to you by Flint reflects it. So it's just a solo Lucas versus Klaus conflict, where you have to hold out against Klaus long enough for him to come to his senses. And it's a long, grueling fight. Really, the solution is to only guard or heal yourself through the entire battle. Otherwise, attacks won't work, and it'll just waste a turn that you could be guarding or healing. And it's slowly having Klaus listen to Flint try to intervene and talk to him, but also mostly listen to the disembodied voice of your mother, Hinawa. And it takes a while. Like, we're talking about dozens of turns of combat here. Mm-hmm. But Klaus does come to his senses, removes his helmet, and sort of deliberately casts a large lightning bolt onto Lucas, and basically takes the lightning full brunt to die in Lucas's arms. And all this with his brother and father watching, and with his mother watching from beyond the grave, and it is just completely heartbreaking. It is it's a messy, emotional fight that I mentioned this to you off air, Alana. It kind of reminds me of Dragon Quest V. There's a fight where, and if you played Dragon Quest V, you know what I'm talking about, which takes place in, you basically have to watch someone die slowly. But it takes place entirely in the battle interface of the game. Yeah. And so in both in Dragon Quest V and in Mother 3, the battle interface is a little bare bones. Like you have it's sort of, enemy photo menus and stats only at the bottom or top of the screen. But you sort of have to, in Dragon Quest V and Mother 3, you just sort of have to just watch someone struggle until they die. And it is so heartbreaking. And speaking specifically to Mother 3, getting more words from Hinawa and more suffering from Flint, and Klaus's attacks get weaker and weaker, to which point where towards the end they're only dealing like 10, 11 damage to you, and he zaps himself and then just embraces Lucas and apologizes and passes on. And it is so rough. Holy shit. This is a Game Boy Advance game. This is a game for children.
I mean, it's not, is it?
No,
we've already talked about all the stuff that makes it not like the children.
It looks like the Charlie Brown and Snoopy show, but its tone and its content
it's even more devastating.
Yeah, its tone and its content are so sophisticated and adult that it's mind blowing. The places that Mother 3 goes, and culminating in the death of Klaus. I sort of knew it was coming. Like I hadn't read a spoiler or anything, but I could sort of see where this is going. This isn't going to end with Lucas and Klaus holding hands and walking back to town together. But it was just such a brutal and poignant moment.
Yeah, I think it's the circumstances, isn't it? Like, you've got Hinawa telling Klaus to get together and stop fighting. Like, it's things like she says, "Stop fighting your brothers," and then there's that flashback where after they've had the twins, they go, "Oh, what do you want our sons to be like?" And both Hinawa and Flint both say, "Oh, we want them to grow up kind, to be like you." And it's like every little thing that drip feeds through that fight is so difficult to process, because it's like, you know, for the first 4 or 5 turns, you can't do any damage to Klaus. And it's not until Flint takes damage, because he runs in and protects you, that you can actually retaliate physically. And it's the whole process of that fight is really hard as a sibling, and like watching Klaus kind of get his senses together and slowly realize what he's done and remember everything. It's really, really hard, because like when people think of the worst of themselves, like sometimes you just want to give up and not be around anymore. And I kind of feel like that's how Klaus felt. Like, he remembered his mother's death. He remembered, you know, he's killed people. He's pulled needles out for this of a Porky and done all of this. And all he wanted to do was get stronger. And if that's all of a consequence of what he wanted, then yeah, it's pretty horrible. Like, Klaus has just gone through so much, and so's Lucas. Like, the thing is, Lucas is mute throughout this whole thing, and it's like, how does he feel about the whole thing? It's a lot to take in 10 minutes of, like, cutscene gameplay stuff, I think.
Lucas is a silent protagonist, and it's not, and it has a bit of a blank face syndrome that, you know, that's true of a lot of silent protagonists. But I think it is communicated that he's sensitive and kind and tries to do good. And with just that background, I don't know, it only makes the moment more devastating.
Yeah, well, you think of everything that Lucas has gone through as well throughout the game, and it's like, this is how it ends. His brother dead in his arms, and he pulls out the final needle to reset the world, which, you know, looks like it's going to go okay, because in the credits you can talk to various different people, and they'll address you, the player. It's like, I don't know, it's just, I felt crap after beating Mother 3. I was like, I don't want to reset the world. Like, knowing that it would probably go through the same cycle again, like that Leda said, with capitalism. And
I don't know, maybe the reset version of the world won't have Pokey's influence? Because Porky was Pokey was a time-traveling agent of chaos. Maybe he never sent Locrea that package of bananas. It's completely uncertain what will happen, although I think we can assume that the existing world is going to be destroyed, and Lucas will rebuild it, and Lucas's pure heart will reflect the new world. But the Mother 3 ends with then the end of the world.
But, you know, if Lucas is changing the world because it's that a pure heart will be able to do this, is his heart pure at that time, though?
right.
You know, as he's doing this, he's deeply grieving, you know, the loss of his brother, who has just been kind of turned against him by these forces that he can't even begin to comprehend in a lot of ways, and much less control. So I'd like to think of the ending as optimistic, but I think there's also the possibility of that being sort of being the optimistic, what we want to happen, but what doesn't actually happen. It could be that with all that destruction and stuff around, that wasn't just the ending that you escape to the credit screen. That might have just been the end of it, period. And the rest of it is just sort of this, you know, dreamlike state of what we wish it could have been.
You made it more tragic, Joe. Stop.
I mean, this is how I interpreted it as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, maybe Lucas isn't pure-hearted anymore after the trauma and turmoil he's gone through.
Oh no!
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't know if this is ever addressed in game, because they say like whoever pulls out the needles has to be either, you know, pure of heart or dark of heart. But they're split between the two people. So is it just determined by the final needle? Because, I don't know, like, why would it make a difference if two different people pull out all the needles? I'm thinking way too much into it, obviously.
Yeah, it's not like a tennis set or a fighting game where you win if you get one more round than the opponent.
4-3.
Yeah.
I mean, they say at some point after Klaus pulls the second needle, like, you have to pull the rest of the needles, and then Klaus pulls another needle.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that, like, I saw the credit sequence is sort of exulting. But yeah, I guess
the Dark Dragon is probably very confused. Again, I think all we have is end ?
All right. Yeah.
Moving through the credits. Oh,
yeah. Did y'all move through the credits?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I texted Alana about it immediately. Yeah.
Again, I mean, like Porky just again manifesting his evil childlike whims, like made Klaus into his toy robot. So like was Klaus's heart even dark? I mean, it might have. Again, they only detected emptiness from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe emptiness is worse. I don't know. That's interesting.
He wasn't even of that world at that point. You know, when Bonnie tries to sniff him, or when Mixie tries to like kind of scope him out, and she's like, I don't sense anything from him. Like he's practically a shell. There might be a point for, you know, good dragon ending, but I think there's some ambiguity there. It's the ending, I think, is beautiful nonetheless, regardless of how exactly it goes. But there could be some, you know, more tragedy incoming from it.
It's very ambiguous, and because we have this notion of the world repeating itself and destroying itself, like there's the thought that Lucas could rebuild the world, and even if he's pure of heart and does it in as well as he can, is it doomed to destroy itself again? Maybe.
It's a bit like Nier Automata in that way, where it's, you know, it's thinking of this sort of cycles of violence and pain as just kind of never ending. But I personally don't see the world like that. I see it as, like, especially within the world of Mother 3, it's the conditions that have been crafted around it that cause this world to be as such. Like, it's not human nature is just inherently terrible. No, it's the environment, it's the conditions, it's the kind of root of capitalism that seeps into everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they sort of turn this into sort of more of a Greek tragedy, whereas like it's sort of like the fate of capitalism that is ruining you, as opposed to any of the flaws of the characters. I mean, certainly Porky is his own force that comes from outside, but he sort of functions as like almost a Greek god here. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that if we're just looking at the humans here, outside of Porky, and the Magypsies included, like I think that you see like sort of a strain of goodness here that I think if Porky is eliminated, I actually think that this is relatively optimistic. The idea that he's gone, regardless.
If Lucas can rebuild the world and there's no Porky and no facade to corrupt the pure world that Lucas creates, then I think that that's a more optimistic worldview than what happens in Mother 3 and in the previous events of Mother 3, where, you know, in the we know that the world prior to the Nowhere Islands was also humanity destroying itself.
Yeah, I think so. I think I just doubt people.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
yeah,
if we're looking at it realistically, then sure, yeah, people are. I mean,
the answer to this question is like, how much faith do you have in human nature and human civilization? Is sort of will affect your worldview on what might happen in a potential new world created by Lucas. These are unanswerable questions, but it's fun to think about, because even though this ending is ambiguous, it's definitely powerful. And I think the most powerful moment in any GBA game I've ever even heard of is that final battle between Lucas and Klaus. But like where Mother 3 ends is something that I will think about for a long, long time. And I mean, and really the point of all art is to make you think things and make you feel things. And I think Mother 3 accomplished both of those elements so powerfully that it might be the best GBA RPG. Like,
I mean, what's the competition? Seriously, I mean, like, there's nothing.
Mario and Luigi, maybe whichever Fire Emblem game you like the best.
No.
All right, if I don't want this to turn into a sixth episode about Fire Emblem, so I think we should probably end it. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this all over the place discussion about Mother 3 that took us 2 weeks. We could do a third episode, and we might yet. I'll tell you about it in a little bit. But again, I'm not going to tell you how to find Mother 3, but if you use Google judiciously, you can find it in English, and it is a hell of an experience. This is both from a mechanical and game design standpoint, and a storytelling and thematic standpoint. This is an incredible video game that I think. I mean, I don't even know I have to advertise it to you. We've completely spoiled everything if you haven't played this game and are listening to us now. So good luck. But I hope you found this discussion entertaining or illuminating, whether you've played the game or not. But if you haven't played this game, maybe you should. But let's go into the future of Retro Encounter a little bit. Next week is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series where we try to determine the best video game console for RPGs. Basically, I miss sports. I'm sad we didn't get a March Madness college basketball tournament for my alma mater, the University of Virginia, to defend their title. I'm very disappointed in that. So I'm filling that hole in my heart that the NCAA tournament left with a 17 console bracket to that's a 16 round a 16 seed single elimination plus a play-in game for the best console for RPGs. We're basically going to argue over the RPG libraries and oeuvres of 17 different consoles and arrive at a single winner. But because that's a exhausting exercise, it's going to be played over 2 episodes, and those are the first episodes you will see in June. Also in June, we're doing 2 episodes on Yakuza 0, that open world action game with a lot of RPG, with increasing amounts of RPG elements over the years, culminating in Yakuza 7, already out in Japan later this year, worldwide, being a straight-up turn-based RPG. But we're going to be exploring one of the most acclaimed Yakuza games in Yakuza 0, also in June. In July, we were doing 2 episodes on Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. That was determined by fan vote a little while ago, and that's a game I've been meaning to get to for a long time, so I'm very eager to start that up soon. But also in July, we're bringing back a format that we've had a lot of fun with in 2019. We are going to do a new episode of RPG Villains focusing on Pokey/Porky Mitch. So there's going to be a lot of Earthbound and Mother 3 talk in July, doing a deep dive into the actions, motivations, and possible regrets of Porky, the main. I'm pretty sure that he was supposed to be Porky all along, but they just localized Porky and Piggy as Pokey and Picky for Earthbound in 1993 or whenever that happened. It's like I've been switching between Porky and Pokey this whole episode, probably confusing everyone involved. But no apologies. There will also be no apologies in that July episode. Just a lot of discussion about our very piggy brat of a villain. But listeners, if you want to email us, the best way to do so is retro@rpgfan.com. I'm going to be plugging the email more in the next couple of weeks because episode 250, I want some emails for that. So please email us, retro@rpgfan.com. You can also contact us by commenting on the rpgfan.com boards, visiting the Facebook page, visiting Instagram, Twitter @rpgfancom, our Discord server, our Twitch channel with something streaming every day, 3 other fine podcasts, Random Encounter focusing on randomness, Rhythm Encounter focusing on RPG music, and Phoenix Edge focusing mostly on current events and is also a weekly podcast. You can review Retro Encounter and those other 3 podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podcast Addict, however you are listening to us. We love feedback. Please give us feedback. But speaking of feedback, if you want to provide individual panelists with feedback, how do you contact them directly? Let's tell you, starting with you, Joe.
So you can find me on RPG Fans Facebook and Twitter, but you can also find me personally as at EvoLeast on Instagram and Twitter, or if you just use the hashtag Marks was right, I will just rise out of nowhere.
Okay, and Zach.
You can email me at zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on Discord at zachw.
And Alana, how can listeners find you?
Twitter is the best place. I am at Alana Hagues on there, or you can email me at alanah@rpgfan.com.
And listeners, if you want to reach me directly, you can find me on Twitter at TheRealMonsoon most of the time, at Evoker4Dogs other times, and I am Monsoon Mike on RPG Fans Discord. So, this was a journey playing through this game with you, Alana, Joe, and Zach, and there will be more journeys on Retro Encounter involving the four of us, but I don't know if any of them will be quite as poignant as this one. Mother 3 really, really blew my mind, and yeah, this was a heavy one, and thank you for accompanying me on this podcast.
I wouldn't have done it with any other people.
Yeah. Loved it.
So listeners, thank you. Good night. Good luck.